Sarka Pradipamani.
Now let me invite Sridevi Miss for the welcome speech.
Good morning, all. Respected Principal Sri Shankara College, Dr. Preeti Nair, Dr. Anjana Shankar, Head of the Department of English, Dr. Lima Antony, our honored guest of the day, research scholars, faculty, my dear colleagues and students, good morning all. We are here at the fag end of 2022, the centennial year of the iconic literary masterpiece, The Wasteland. And Srishti, the Pen Club of Department of English, is organizing a webinar on the topic, Revisiting the Wasteland in the 21st Century. As we all know, Wasteland gave birth to a new form of poetry, breaking away from the conventional styles that existed till the beginning of 20th century, marking itself as the most revolutionary poem of its time. A basic awareness of Wasteland is crucial for any student of English literature. The resource person for the day is Dr. Lima Antony, Assistant Professor in the Research and Postgraduate Department of English, St.Xavier's College for Women, Aluva. She is a research guide, my supervisor. She has a number of publications to her credit and has chaired various sessions in UGC-sponsored national seminars. She is also a writer and translator. She has brought out 2 books, Petunia Pookalode Kathagaran and Kadalilekkulla Savarika. It is my utmost honor to welcome Dr. Lima Antony on behalf of the teachers and students of English department. Welcome, ma'am. The forum is open to you now. Thank you.
Shall we begin?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah, before I forget, I would like to express my gratitude to Department of English, St.Xavier College, Kanadi, for their invitation to this webinar on the Wasteland. Years of friendship and collaboration is there with Preeti Miss, the principal, and Anjana is the HOD. Personally, I thank Manu, Rajesh, Sridevi, and also all other faculty members of the department for their wholehearted love and support. In case I forget at the end of the session, so I thank them all very personally. We have got a very personal relationship with many faculties there. So it is just an honor and pleasure to be in this platform. Without delay, we shall move on to the discussion. It is rather a recap because Wasteland is a poem which is there in the common psyche of all English teachers. Not only teachers, whoever has studied English literature, it stays with you. It is like a collective unconscious that is there. So it is just a recap. Maybe we can add collectively to some more readings in the 21st century. It is just a revisiting what we already know, what we have discussed. 100 years is just enormous years. So much criticism has gone into the poem. And that itself intimidates me in going for a presentation, but it is, anyhow, we shall get into the presentation without delay. Hope I am audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Slides are visible.
Yes, ma'am. It's visible. It's visible.
Thank you. So I have titled my presentation as Revisiting the Wasteland in 21st Century. Why it is so, we shall come to the end of the discussion and we shall see what has happened in 20th and 21st century and the revisiting, what is the differences that it makes. When you revisit a poem, it is 100 years since it's also a year of 100 years for Ulysses, the great novel. We come to Eliot, we already know his biography, so not much detail is given here. He is an English poet, playwright, and critic. born in America, but he became a British citizen in 1927 at the age of 39. And his parents were not happy at his decision. But maybe that was crucial in bringing in the poem, in the sense that when he sees London after war, that makes a huge lot of impact on him. And he is a leader of modern movement in poetry. He won Nobel Prize in 1948. These are his major works. Some critics say that Philomena had a great influence on Wasteland. That is something to do with the biographical study of how this poem came into being. And many other poems, something like preludes, we can assume. 100 Years, written in 1922, published in 1922, and we are reading it in 2022. Was first published in a magazine called Criterion, which was edited by Eliot himself. Then it was published in Dial the same year. It won Magazine's Poetry Prize, and subsequently it was later published with notes by Eliot, footnotes by. So it is first time in the history that we have a poem which gives you a lot of footnotes. So when it was first published, how the readers must have been baffled by, they don't know so many languages. And what is this poem all about? Now we already know critics have worked on it for such a long time. So we should imagine a situation where this comes out and people read it. So in 2022, we already know the poem. We can reevaluate it, its structure, its meaning, its significance. And at first reading, one thing is very, very clear. That is, it is complex. It is an enormously complex poem. And it has got brilliant techniques, that is innovative techniques that is used by the poet. Why this innovation? Because the world after World War, First World War, was not something which was, at that time, it was something which was in shatters. The European cities were in shatters. People were having problems coping up with the reality, and many, many problems that were because of the aftermaths of World War. So how to find a voice for all these things? And there comes the poem which addresses this, but people are not able to make sense. So that is our first reaction to the poem. It is complex, it is erudite, it is diverse, different. It was criticized. Some people received it. So any time when a change comes, sometimes some are very reluctant to accept it. Some would accept it with, they just welcome it. So the same reaction was there with regard to Wasteland also. It caused a sensation. At the same time, people criticized it for its complexity, its erudite style. Some denounced it for its obscurity. Some praised it for its modernity. And it is now one of the mostly widely translated work, and it also encompasses the vision of modern life, written in 434 lines. As a poem, when you read it now, it is 434 lines that we are reading. Mixed reception. Some said that it is masterpiece. It about generations of lost souls, and many denounced it for its elusiveness, as we know. And Cleand Brooks commended that it's highly condensed epic poem of modern age, and it depicts life in London after the aftermath of First World War. So various critics have put in lots of studies into what is a poem about. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfectly audible, Lima.
Yeah, yes, miss. Thank you. So Richards said that it is a sense of desolation, of uncertainty, of futility, groundless aspirations. Everything comes through the poem. So I have quoted these people. These are some choicest critics. There are so many who have studied, who have put their heart and soul into the poem. It's very much part of their psyche. And let it be. What is your response to the poem is the most important factor. As readers, each one has a dialogic relationship. When I first read it, I couldn't make sense of it. Then it took time in reading, in contemplating, in teaching. And each time you read it, something new you discover about it. That is something very crucial about reading a poem like Wasteland. And as we all know, this was not the first title that Eliot intended for this poem. He had the title, He Do the Police in Different Voices. And it's from Charles Dickens' Our Mutual Friend. There is an old woman named Old Betty, and she has an adopted son, Sloppy. So Sloppy has the habit of reading newspapers, and he reads the dialogues of many police officers, and he does it in such a way that he do the police in different voices. So it is hinting at his ventriloquial skills. So that was a title that was first intended, but I feel that Wasteland is the appropriate title for the poem. Sometimes it would have deflected our attention to the seriousness of the poem. If it was, just imagine when you see this, he do the police in different voices and the Wasteland simultaneously. Every poem has got a origin, a genesis. That is also something very interesting that you find with regard to how this poem came into our hands in the form that you see it now. And when you visualize, so it is something that I do often. I try to visualize things. So when I visualize Wasteland, aridity is the image that springs out where nothing grows. There is no water. And in 21st century, when you read Wasteland, you see all sorts of garbages lying here and there. So that is also a kind of wasteland that you find. So the wasteland that Eliot found has become a literal wasteland even now. We have so much of garbage, digital waste, so many things. And he was inspired by Jessie Weston's From Ritual to Romance in choosing the title, The Wasteland. And it has many metaphorical connotations. It is the waste regions of self, of contemporary Europe. It is aridity that is there, physically, emotionally, spiritual sterility that he would like to speak of. And it's very difficult when you are trying to communicate something which is so unreal, which doesn't make sense. So if something is concrete, we can communicate it through a photograph maybe. But when things are not so easy, it is something which exists on an emotional level, you find it very difficult. So that was the difficulty that Eliot was also facing when he was penning the poem, The Wasteland, after the experience of World War. When it was published, it changed the course of modern poetry. If you take any collections, you find so many modern poets, and Wasteland has got a very crucial role in all the collections. It had tremendous impact. It was dedicated to Ezra Pound, and we know why. And when you read it, it is cryptical, elusive. There are myths which comes up. There is the contemporary social realities that, and there is also a prediction. He's like a prophet. He's telling us that you need salvation and you'll have to search for it. So the hope that is not there in the minds of people, if that is lost, that is the end of humanity. So we have reached till here. We are controlling the whole of the earth. We don't know about the universe in future, but till now we are controlling. That is because we have fought great battles. And that kind of hope is also, it is not complete disillusionment. It is a depiction of disillusionment, but at the same time, there is hope that he gives in the poem. So it is why it is a modern poem. It's just a recap. of what modernity is. We know the period between 19th and mid 20th century. After the World War, industrialization was happening, capitalization was happening, social changes were there, family was changing, the science was into the life of people. People were using contraceptives. So that was something very new too. How you can control your body, how that thing was very new at that time. And social sciences, Freudian theories, everything was making. So psychology, philosophy, political theories, everything was influencing man. And a kind of anxiety springs up in our minds when you are in 21st century. The digitalization that is going on at an enormous level has an impact on you. If I'm not there, if I'm not in Facebook, if I'm not, we have a kind of fear whether we'll be left out in the race. So these are so minor now. We are used to change, but at that time it was something which was new. And one important impact it has on people in general was a kind of disillusionment and a fragmented feel. So how would you portray this? And there was an answer for Eliot. That was the poem Wasteland, in which he speaks of redemption and renewal, sterility and spirituality. At the same time, you can find a number of opposite things that is merged into the poem. You have fragments, you have obscure allusions. So these are all characteristics of modern. When you read Virginia Woolf, when you read Ulysses, you find all this. When you read Asst.Pound, you find images recapturing of modernity in their works, stream of consciousness technique that is used by Virginia Woolf. So everyone was doing a lot of experiments at that time, but this was something like a precursor to what was happening, what was going to happen in the whole of literature. And we know how the world order changed. Renaissance God, who was protecting the world, suddenly disappeared because this war was so enormous that if God was there, he would have stopped that. But man couldn't find. So we need immediate answers for the enormous problems that we are facing, and we are not finding them. That is going to create a problems in us. So man was becoming very, very rational. He was facing innumerable problems. And the most acute one, I think, there can be debates on this, is one concerning one's own selfhood. What you make out of all these broken images and pieces that you find in the universe, your own self, you'll have to somehow make sense of this. So questioning regarding one's position in the, why are we born? Where are we heading to? Where is our salvation? These are questions that science is asking, philosophy is asking, religion is asking, literature is asking. Every man in this universe who has some sense of self would be searching. So this unexplained miseries that followed and the Great Depression, all this culminated in the writing of the poem. And this is how I would picturize one of the very prominent things which I feel is the poem speaking, a kind of disillusionment. These are images I took from internet. But it picturizes disillusionment that is there, a kind of fragmented self is there. These something which strikes you when you read the poem. And the poem is dedicated to Asst.Pound. We know what is the importance of this remarkable person in the life of Eliot. He is called Il Miglio Fabro, that is Italian, means the greater craftsman, whom he considered as his friend, as a teacher, who made thorough revisions of the poem. And what you see now, it's because of the contribution of Asst.Pound also. It is not quite the poem that he originally drafted. So this is a draft that you can find. And he significantly revised the poem, suggested major cuts, compressed the poem. And he himself wrote about this. Asst.Pound wrote in 1921. Astra performed the cesarean operation on the poem. So that is how their relationship goes, and that is why it is dedicated to Asst.Pound. And when you read the epigraph of the poem, this is the epigraph of the poem, it uses diverse languages, Latin, Greek, Italian. So just imagine the reader reading it for the first time without any notes, footnotes, or critical insights. How can one make sense of a language which we have not read, which we cannot understand? It doesn't signify anything. So all this is something new for the readers then, but it is no longer so for us. So that is why it's rereading. It's never a poem is same when you read it once or twice or thrice, and it goes on changing. As we evolve, it also changes. So the draft of the poem reveals how it contained twice much the material as, so it was double the length, and Ezra Pound suggested changes. Eliot removed the larger sections, and thus we have the poem with us. These are two major texts that you find a seminal influence on Wasteland. One is From Ritual to Romance, and other is Golden Vow. It is a Ritual to Romance is about a King Arthur legends, and it is pagan elements and Christian influences, all that is being dealt with. And Golden Vow is much interesting work, which is a study of comparative religions. It is a study of magic and religion. What is the connection between magic and religion? And it is a survey of the spiritual beliefs, practices, cultures worldwide. And it is a very beautiful book. It was first published in 12 volumes, and you have got a very abridged version that is interesting to read. If you can purchase one, it's very cheap. You can get one. It's a very interesting work. Even if you don't connect it with Wasteland, otherwise also it is very, very, very beautiful book that you can read. And this is something which we should think of. So I'm keeping in mind the maybe students who are also there as listeners in this webinar. So that is a kind of poetic technique that is used in the poem. So he has used several techniques in the poem for linking past and present. There is use of myths and legends, allusions, symbols, quotations, phrases. So many things come together. There is mixture of many styles like narrative, dramatic, lyrical, elusive. You have a protagonist, one who seems like a protagonist, Thyracious, but whether is actually a protagonist, that is to be debated. So we can't come to any sort of conclusion regarding anything in the poem. That is why it is called elusive. It slips away from your hands. It is not easy to grasp it easily. So this is a critical view of Eliot, that he had great reverence for tradition. He has got a very seminal essay, Tradition and Individual Talent, and that can be read along with how he treats tradition in his poem. So you have a number of references. The very first line of the poem reminds you of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. So how tradition comes alive. Each poet may have different attitudes to tradition, and Eliot's concept of tradition comes out into the poem in a very, very strange way. So this is his idea. This can be explored further in the light of how he treats tradition in Wasteland. So again, we come to what is the theme of the poem. Is it about the disillusioned people after World War? It's a legend. The legend of search of Grail comes in. There is panicky fears that people fear. There is barren lust. So sexuality is one of the major significant themes that is dealt with. And why sexuality? So it is something which is given by God. It has got a reproductive function. But for the Wastelanders, it is just lust. It has stopped to be a very meaningful act. It is very lustful act. And it doesn't gratify, it doesn't give them any sense of meaning. It is just an act. So how he brings in, it is a very, very prominent image that brings in a lot of things about. So if there is something wrong with the sexuality of a community, but now I feel so. If there is something wrong, you can read into there is some sickness in the society. The male-female ratio may be changing. If women are attacked, all sort of things. You can so read what is there, how people treat this very holy thing, and how they take it. That gives insights into what, what is your outlook. That is so. Maybe that has brought in a very subtle way that is dealt with in all the themes, all the sections of the poem. And the city that is depicted. London is a city that he was living in, and he liked that city. But at the same time, it can be any city in Europe, wherever people feel this meaninglessness has crept into their life. All that cities can be wastelands. So wasteland doesn't limit to London alone. It can be universal. So secularized city. Dante's Inferno is brought in here, where you can, hell is there, and the modern cities are there, where you find people are modern, but in their minds they have lost hope. So that is a hellish condition, and they are searching for, groping for meaning. That kind of feeling, which is very strong. So this particular poem is, in that sense, timeless. Simultaneously, it makes us aware of the moral grandeur and also the evil. It brings in so many things which is just opposite to each other. These are predominant themes. You find the image of Christ. So this is definitely from Because of Ritual and Romance, and from Golden Bough. You can find these images recurring, rebirth, how we had the tradition of burying the effigies. Earlier times, when a land, how no, we know that in Thebes, when the city was going through a very bad period, it had something to do with the sin that the ruler had committed, and how we end up in Oedipus, who had sinned, and he has to sacrifice, only that the land will become fertile again. So the same theme gets repeated in Christianity, where the whole of humanity has sinned, and they have to be redeemed. And how can you redeem? It is only God who can come and redeem, and he has to be sacrificed. So earlier it was sacrificial animals, later it was effigies, and now it is God of Son of Man who is sacrificed. So that may continue in modern forms in our societies also. So how we haven't progressed. So the recent events in Kerala also points to maybe that is some kind of problem with the people who have done it. But still, you can read into things how sick the society is, and how it has evolved from being very a savage man to modern man, how we have not changed in our attitude to certain things. And there are many historical figures, some mythical figures who symbolize this kind of aridity. One good example is the Fisher King. He is a mythical figure. He is important. He is wounded, and only by healing him, the land will regain all its brilliance. And how to heal him, that is a question. So people are in search of Grail. So we end up from one problem to another problem, and we search for Grail. So all the tradition that has gone into the making of a civilization comes together in this poem. And it's not easy to bring it like this, to connect it like circular in movement. It moves on, it comes to, it solves, it suggests to say certain problems, that it suggests certain solutions to what we face even now. So however much we discuss, there is not one single theme that is there in the poem. There are innumerable themes that we can find. Discontentment is there, disillusionment is there, isolation is there. Then there is harsh realities of world. There is lack of connection. How connected we are. Still we are all alone. So how communication in society is just very peripheral. So you can read it with 21st century. So that is why I said these were the realities in 20th century. Now we are in a digital age, more connected. We communicate more. Instantaneous communication is. So are we connected, or is it something that we are struggling to make sense? We are afraid of speaking it out. We need another Eliot to picturize it for us. We don't know. So that is a search which I would say that should go on in the minds of all who are reading the poem, the new readers of the 21st century, the young readers, the millennials who will be reading. It should also make sense to them. So that is also very crucial in understanding the poem now. So we are old readers. We need new readers, how they take the poem. So maybe they are not finding it as meaningless as we are. Maybe we are old school. That is why we find it like this. We don't know. That has to be discussed with them. So people only appear to be living. They are dead. That was the condition then. And Eliot, with his great mastery, with his quintessential writing skills to picturize, that is the master writing something that made the whole difference in the approach to the theme. So it was not something new, it was experienced by the society, but giving voice to it, writing about it was something that stays with you, that outlives the literary tradition, that becomes a classic. So this poem became a classic because of so many very reasons that is there. So dreadful changes that have occurred in the society, and many changes were shaking people to the moral core. Intimacy and love, culture and tradition, religion and faith, everything comes through the poem. It is a mixture of all these things. And the problems of modern societies are being hinted at. Spirituality, hope, ambition, and people are also clinging to past. We always have this nostalgic way of presenting the past things, and we compare it with present. That is a human nature. That is also there. We are comparing the past with something very beautiful and very comfortable. Present is something which is smothering us, which is very causing great many complexities in our life. So that is always, man is always complaining about. We cannot take in that sort of complaining reader. That approach is also taken in to be the part of the poem. So you find a number of voices in the poem. You find a number of innumerable characters in the poem. And it is difficult to bring in all that in one lecture on the poem. So as I was telling, it is just a rereading. Each reader have got a very dialogic experience with the poem, which will be very personal, and that sharing of those thoughts of how you have experienced the poem is much more important than what I have experienced about the poem. So he uses different voices. There is satire, there is prophecy. And one thing I would like to add here is when you come to postmodernism, you can find a kind of celebration of all this fragmented state. You can find there is, when you come to culture studies, you can find mixing of low art with great art. You can find all that in Wasteland. From a nursery rhyme to Upanishads, from Bible to silly soap operas, you find everything merges. You have great prophets. You have ordinary Sweeney, who is a homosexual. Maybe so many Madame Sosostris, who is a clairvoyant. You find Sybil of Cumain, who was also a prophetess. And you find so many unimportant Wastelanders. You find so many great people. Everyone comes. So there is satire, there is prophecy. And we can also see Eliot prophesying things. His own self. What is the identity? What is the identity of the speaker? That is something which is very difficult to grasp, because unannounced, there is change in location, in the speaker, in the time, everything changes. It conjures up a vast range of cultures and literatures. So how years of reading must have gone into this kind of erudite way of dealing with things. So it was not easy to understand the poem with such complexity. So multiple shifting speakers. When you read the poem, you'll have to keep this in mind. Then you will, why this is changing, why location is changing, why, where is Thyracious gone? So we don't get answer to. So great works would always leave us with lots of questions. So that is something that you can find in the poem. It leaves us with a whole lot of questions. And the theme can be war, it can be trauma, it can be disillusionment, it can be about death. So many of them. So the aesthetics of the poem, when we come to it, subverts all the ideas of organic unity. So we always search for something that unifies things. And that we cannot find. So you'll have to let go. It's something like seeing the movie. I don't know whether you've seen the movie Matrix. So it was just disturbing when I saw the movie. It was something like that when I read Wasteland. This is just a personal observation. You may not agree with it. So it shatters all your organic structures. There is plurality of voices, quotations from several texts, variety of languages, styles, and genres. There is mixing of myths. There is dying gods. There is resurrected God. There is quest for Holy Grail. Then there is the silly Madam Sosostris with the bad cold, who has got a pack of tarot cards. And when she picks up the cards, she finds a dead man is there. So there are several genres like romance to elegy to epic to Jacobean drama to detective novels to music hall comedies. Everything fuses, come together. It produces a kind of aesthetics that is very unique to the poem. That is something which we should appreciate about. Bringing so many dissonant voices and ideas, he is able to produce a kind of organic unity. So that is for a master to do, that is a master craftsman can do. So that is why we call, so everybody is calling Eliot a great poet. Everybody is calling Wasteland as a great poet. We may not agree. You will have to read and see. Each individual reading should bring in new insights into the poem, and you should be convinced that it will be great. So repeating after so many people have said that is great, nothing will help you. So the real understanding of the poem lies in how we are able to speak of or to make sense out of the aesthetics of the poem. And when we come to the narrator, the I in the poem, it doesn't have any autonomy. It doesn't determine identity. As we know, it merges, fuses, fractured. Sometimes it is the poet, sometimes it is the biblical prophet, sometimes it is the fisher king, sometimes it is Buddha, sometimes it is St. Augustine, and at times it is Thyracious, then Philomena, Mrs. Potter, Madam Sosostris, and many more. There are many narrators who tell, many wastelanders who tell us this is what is happening to us, this is what we see, this is what our life is. They speak to us, multiple voices merge and fuse and tell us this is what we are happening, that is happening to us. And there is male and female voice that merges into a single identity at times. Then you see Thyracious. You know, Thyracious is a very interesting character. We all know how he is bisexual. He knows what is to be male. He knows what is to be female. So voyeuristic Thyracious, who sees the sexual acts of people, who knows what it is to be. He has seen Philomena. And what has happened to Philomena? He has seen the modern day wastelanders having engaged in sexual. So it's like voyeuristic Thyracious. Then you have the female voices of Hyacinth, the girl, Philomena, Thames' daughters. Then you have women in game of chess, again hinting at the sexual aridity of people. And women are victims of desires. And there are infidelities and cruelties that recur, like the old Philomena image, whose image is there in one of the rooms that you can find, where a woman is waiting for a person who would come, who would make sex with her, then he will depart. And these allusions maybe that you find in the poem, maybe because of his sense of tradition, that you can find how Eliot believed in tradition, how past lives in present, all that his as a literary critic also he has contributed much. So we'll have to read into what is his concept. You can read, you can apply all that in your understanding of the poem. So whatever means you get, whatever ways you can understand the poem better, we should use all that. So maybe new readings are coming up. I recently found a study in 21st century after the pandemic. When you read it, what is the effect on the reader? And it was analyzing how we felt when we were within our house. We were restricted. We couldn't move. And when you read the poem, what is the effect it has on you? So new criticism had contributed much. That can also be one of the things that we can explore when you read into the aesthetics of the poem. Then this is how I would like to visualize the poem. This is the collage that emerges as we read. This is only a limited version of the collage that would emerge when you read the poem. This is a visual collage that I created out of the images which I borrowed from Google, of course. So there you see after resurrection how Christ walks with his his disciples, and you find Eliot there. You find the Canterbury Tales, how April was very sweet month when people used to go for pilgrimages. And there is blind Thyracious, who's blind but he sees everything. That is a contradiction that you can find. He is blind, but he can see. We are not blind, but we cannot see. Such contradictions are found. Then World War is there, Holy Grail is there, Buddha is there giving his sermon. And then we end up, the ending is in Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. That is a turning of west to east. So many times West was having the conception of being superior to East. Now West is in shackles and they need to search for some meaning, and the meaning can be found in some great Upanishadic text, and he's hinting at that. We'll come to that later. So this is a kind of visual collage that would emerge. There are much more, but I should have limited it to one slide. These are the pictures I could accommodate in one slide. So only these I have put in. So just the experiment of how you can, what it is to be when you read the poem. Then we come to the epigraph of the poem, that is a dedication to Sybil of Cumae. And Sybil is a very interesting figure. She was an oracle and she wanted immortality. And she wanted as many years as grains of sand in her hand. But one thing she forgot to ask Apollo. She just forgot to ask about her youth. And when you at the beginning you see what is happening to Sybil. Many children have come there. She's hung in a neck cave. And what happens is they come and ask you, Sybil, what do you want? And she says, I want to die. So that is the death wish that comes in the beginning of the poem, where Sybil wants to die. The Wastelanders also want to be in slumber. They don't want to wake up. They want to die. But they want to be buried. The burial of the dead, that is the first section of the poem. So she just became a voice, it seems. Her body had withered away and she became a voice. Again, you can find her in Virgil. So it's a very interesting figure. She is at the beginning of the poem. And what is her desire? Her desire is to die. So these are different characters that you can find in Wasteland. And they are victims of all kinds of perversions. So that speaks of some sick societies where you have problems, that is groping up. They are lonely, they want love, but what they get is sex, not love. And Thyracious, as we know, is a blind prophet. Again, we had discussed it. He has got the famous clairvoyance of being transformed into a woman for many years. This is a picture showing how transformed he is to a woman. There are reasons why he was transformed. He had because he struck mating snakes. That is how he became, and again he turned back to a man. There are many stories with regard to Thyracious. We can read that, and we are interested in him as a character in Wasteland. And what is the importance of this character? He is very important because he is both man and woman. He can understand what a woman feels, what a man feels. He can understand with his blind eyes what is going on in their minds. So Eliot himself has said that Thyracious sees, in fact, what Thyracious sees is the substance of the poem. He is like a string that unites all the 5 sections. It's like a variety of flowers on a garland that you will find. So he is like a thread that connects all the 5 sections of Wasteland. Then you have Fisher King. Already we just discussed him in very brief ways. Keeper of Holy Grail. He is an enigmatic figure, wounded by his own spear. He suffers a moral wound, actually. It's a physical wound, at the same time a moral wound. He is sterile. He is impotent king. He has to get out of this particular sterility. Only then his land will prosper. This is a very suitable character for the Wasteland, which is also desiring for regeneration. When the rain comes, the seeds that is buried under the earth would regenerate. And that regeneration is something that is lacking for Europeans, European culture, that they would like to bring all that greenery into their life, but that is not there. You find Madame Sosostris. She is a famous clairvoyant, and it is taken from, as we know, literary allusions are there. That is part of the poem. So each person may have a replica in earlier works that was written maybe many centuries before. You have Mr. Eugen, that is a homosexual person. He is in the tarot card that Madame Sosostris is taking, and his pocket is full of currants. And currants are small, seedless, dried grapes, again signifying the aridity of Wasteland. So each small little things, that images that you find, points to something. And it is very useful to look at these small hints that the poet gives to understand the poem. So it foreshadows a dark future. He is inviting a merchant to a Cannon Street hotel, and that is for a homosexual tryst. So bisexual Thyracious, you have homosexual Eugen. So many people come together, they fuse. So there is a place for everyone in Wasteland. Not only great prophets, not only great figures, even ordinary people. Philomena was raped and mutilated by her sister's husband, Thyracious, and so that she wouldn't speak it out about her experience, her tongue was cut out, and she became a nightingale. That is the story. And what is the significance of Philomena in Wasteland? There are many Philomenas in modern Wasteland also who are not able to speak out, who experience the same way that she has experienced a sexual act. It is a very violent act that has happened to her. Then you have the Hyacinth girl, the rich lady, the typist, and so many characters that you meet as you read the poem. Then you have Flabas, that is death by water, describes the death of this person. It's a Phoenician, he drowned. How death comes to us, and death may not be acceptable, but we'll have to die. So death brings in resurrection. So the fear of death won't do. We have to do something to resurrect. So many ideas are fused into the titles also. Grail legend, we know it's a legendary story of Holy Grail. It is the most enduring story in Western European literature. How Arthurian legends are there about the search for Grail. It is the last cup of the Last Supper that Christ used. It is also said to have received his blood flowing from Christ's head. So we don't know what is the mythical connotation. Anyhow, that legend persists, and that was brought to Britain, and there are stories of people searching for it. So there is a search for Holy Grail. Why? Because we need a solution to the problem. So always man wants solution to whatever problems. So when this pandemic came, we were just waiting for how it would end up in a medicine that would end the sufferings of the people. So man always searches for solution. So this is one of the solutions that West would have sought. But it has passed that stage of legends. Now they are in a scientific age, they need some concrete, evident things to solve their problems. The 5 sections of Wasteland, the burial of dead, a game of chess, the fire sermon, death by water, what the thunder said. So very crucial 5 sections. And through this 5 sections, it tackles multiple messages that is there in the poem. And when you consider, it's a bit of an analysis that is done on the 5 sections of the poem. It is the burial of the dead, that is about memories. Memories come back. So memory sometimes haunts us. There is a German woman who is introduced named Mary. And along with her, what is introduced is the world that is barren and desolate, the wasteland that is lying there. And infertile grounds are shown, dead trees are shown, and what is going to happen to this? So we become curious, what will happen? So the title also alludes to the Anglican burial services that is there. So it is people's hearts. It is empty, it is silent. There is love of the hyacinth, the girl that you find. Then it is, what is it about? You may wonder. It is a doomed reality of that era. So all this is all negative things. And you may feel that what is the kind of happiness that you get by reading all these negative things. So it is a kind of Aristotelian solution, like you have a cathartic feeling when you go through this very painful experiences of this. You realize what is the meaning of life. You hold on to what is valuable, what is to be left behind. So that kind of personal message can be one of the contributions of reading the poem. And then you meet Madame Sosostris, and we see how people have survived the war, but that has destroyed them, alienated them. And there are effects of both outward appearance and both inward problems. Both are hinted at. Then the speaker goes to London. And what he sees there, he sees London Bridge, the monumental London Bridge, historical London Bridge. Many people are walking, but when they are walking, he sees that they are all dead people. They don't have life. Life is gone from them. They are no longer connected in any way. And again, Seston, a dead figure from the past, comes in. So burial of dead brings in a lot of things that we might have seen earlier, and sometimes which we have related to. It brings in a lot of images that is disturbing also. So we just look at a glimpse. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with the spring rain. So when rain comes, something which is hidden, which is there, which sprouts. So that sprouting of things, that sprouting of life is painful. They don't want to regain that. They want to be in slumber. So that is why April is. So when you read Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, April was the sweetest month. People wanted to go for, they wanted to rejuvenate their spirituality then. They wanted to go for pilgrimages. that same April has come again after many years after war, and it has all changed. There are opposites that is brought into memory, desire. Winter is there, which kept us warm. And now earth is forgetful, snow was covering. So earth, it was a very sweet state of affairs, being like this, inactive, a little life with the dried tubers. So all that is dry would sprout if rain comes, but rain is not there. The land is arid. So aridity that crept into at many levels. Spiritually, people are dead. And outside, because of the war, there are many problems that you find. And spiritually, in relationships, and at many levels. So aridity is one of the very poignant themes of the poem that can make sense. If you stick on to this theme, the poem will make sense as you go along reading it. So this is one of my favorite lines from Wasteland. The poet is looking at the people who is walking on the London Bridge. A crowd flowed over London Bridge, so many I had not thought death had undone so many. Death had undone so many are dead. They never knew that they are dead. They are walking. They are like machines. They are like robots, but they are dead. So London City and then it's an inferno. Infernos is, if you know what is inferno. So the kind of life that it's a purgatory that is there. So there is high time that it is also a message that is left for humanity to relive the experience, to get back to life, to hold on to what we have lost in life, to search for meaning. Then we come to Game of Chess, again hinting at the sexual aridity that is there. So here it is very evident. A wealthy woman is sitting in her exquisite room. So again, from Antony and Cleopatra, the Shakespearean lines are quoted here. But you see an ordinary wealthy woman who is in search for love. And there is an image of Philomena on the wall. So the Greek myth merges with modern women who are like them, but not in similar ways. They have their problems. So it speaks of the emptiness that you can find, the passion and affection which is lacking within the society, and what is forgotten in relationship. So all that intimate affection and passion that is there between people, and that is shown through. So as I already had discussed, sexuality is one of the themes that again and again persists in the poem. So why it is so? It shows something which is intimate. It shows a reproductive capacity of human beings, but how it has ended up in something which is very mechanical. That is shown very evidently in this section. There it ends with conversation between two ladies in a bathroom of a bar, and there is a Lil whose husband has left her, and she is looking very hideous because of the medications, because of the contraceptives that she is using, the abortion pills that she has consumed. So hinting at all that is happening in the modern world, how couples have lost communication, how they have lost intimacy, how a mere sexual act becomes a very painful experience for both men and women. So women are more in that light. The emotional responses figured out, and Thyracious sees all this that is happening too, and he can predict. It is like Philomena's act of getting raped. This is the beginning. The chair she sat in, like burnished throne, glowed on marble, where the glass held up by the standard wrote with the fruited wines from which a golden Cupid peeped out. So Cupid is love, the god of love. Now love has ended. It has become lust. The change of Philomena is there, and you can, by the barbarous king, so rudely forced, very explicitly stating the sexual act that is there. So the game of chess also is something which hints to that. And Still she cried, and still the world pursues Jug Jug to dirty ears. Very obviously, he, without any kind of metaphors, he's just speaking it plain about the sexual act that is there, that has become dirty, that has become something like something which haunts people. It is no longer a very pleasant thing. So that is one. It also ends. We can. I'm not reading the whole thing because it will consume a whole lot of time. So what is that noise? The wind under the door. What is that noise now? What is the wind doing? Nothing. Again, nothing. Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? Nothing. Nothing repeats. The negativity that is recaptured beautifully in the dialogues that you read in the poem. Are we in Rat's Alley, where the dead men lost their bonds? What is the condition of the world now? We can ask that when world doesn't make sense. You can read the poem when you can relate to the poem when world doesn't make sense. So that is aesthetically how you respond to the poem. Then we come to the famous section, which is also, every section is, but this is something which is historical, which is remarkable because it is the sermon given by Buddha. And in the first section, you see the polluted Thames that is running. So industrialization has crept into, and it has polluted the beautiful Thames that was, and nymphs were there when Spencer wrote about it. Now, when you read it, when you read Wasteland, you see so many things lying. It has become a polluted river. And it again, the loveless sexual act is hindered again because it is also a place where people meet, lovers meet. So that is there. Thyracious comes in the background in the poem. And this is how the beginning lines. The river bears no empty bottle. Sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimonies of summer nights. The nymphs are departed. The sweet Thames that was running softly when Epithalamion was written, that has come to be a river where there are no empty bottles, sandwich papers. Luckily, that is not there. These are the things that you will find in the river, but now there are no proofs. Maybe it has all flown away and no people have come yesterday, maybe the reason. And the sound of horns and motors which shall bring Sweeney to Mrs. Potter in the spring. Oh, the moon shone bright on Mrs. Potter and her daughter. They washed their teeth in soda water. This is just a very comedic lines that you would find in the poem. That is what I said. It mixes and merges high to low art. Nothing unusual is there. The merging is something which brings a kind of structure to the poem. It never stands out in the poem. It is fused in. So these ordinary lines, silly poems, silly lines that we quote sometimes, all that is brought into the poem along with a great theme of the fire sermon that was given by Buddha. That comes in, and along with that, you find such lines also. Then we come to the unreal city, very, very poignant words. Under the brown fog of winter noon, Mr. Eugen, we have introduced to him. He is a homosexual, and he has got a pocket full of currants which would never sprout, seedless. As the city is unreal, it is barren. It has drained people out of all the liveliness that they had earlier. Religion has gone away from their life. Their belief system has vanished. Their relationships have crumbled. All this has got an effect on the poet also. That is why the city is not unreal. What he feels it to be, it is only in minds that you can create unreality. So literally also you can create sometimes. So unreal in more in an emotional sense than in a literal sense. So Thyracious comes, old man with wrinkled ducks perceives the scene. He knows what is going to happen to the rest. Everything will end up meaningless. All that Philomena story is going to get repeated. there is barrenness that is coming into the life of people. So it is about, again, reminding people of death, meaninglessness, robotic characters, vitality, love, care that has disappeared from the world. So Buddhism has got this unique way of how should we attain salvation. You'll have to control a whole lot of things. So that is in contrast with what is happening now. We can read along with this high ideals of religion. You have Christianity, you have Buddhism, you have got our Indian ideas of spirituality. Everything comes, fuses in these diverse sections of the poem. Then it's a very brief section where you are introduced to Flabas, the Phoenician, how he was drowned and how his body was eaten up by all the sea creatures. So one interesting thing about the sections is that all the elements are conjured up in the poem. You have earth, you have fire, you have water. These many elements have the capacity for rejuvenation. It is used as spiritual symbols, and how these spiritual symbols can be at the same time horrifying, at the same time rejuvenating. This contrast is something which is very interesting that you find when you collect the collage for the poem. And there is inevitability. So that is something will haunt you throughout your life, that there will be a world without you. There will come a time when you will die. So that is an inevitable part, but accepting that and living like that, that is the most painful thing. So death is something which will come to us all. But the fear that sweeps into our life, the meaninglessness, that can be horrifying. So that is what he is trying to recapture through the poem in the various sections, hinting at through the titles also. His fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls, the deep sea swells, and the profit and loss. People are in search of many things, fortunes, and where you end up, you are drowned by water. So water can sometimes have a region. It can, in the baptism of Christ, you can find where water is used as a symbol of giving life. New life is given to you. And water can bring you death also. So all these are merged and fused together. Then we come to the last section, that is what the thunder said. So thunder is something which is very interesting, and it is from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and the theme of barrenness is brought again. So for the rain to come, we begin with rain. The rain is not there, it is barren. So what the land requires is water, it requires rain. So the theme of barrenness, again repeated, destroys the world with drought and hallucination that we have destroyed. It has become a barren land, literally, and on emotional levels it has become, people have lost faith, they have lost their faith in relationship, they have lost faith in God, they even have lost in faith of what is going to happen to humanity. So all that is brought in again and again and again through the poem. So there's a huge stony land that is present. It is all dry. Biblical images are conjured up again. Two people are walking and Christ is walking. They don't realize the spiritual presence that is there. So how we fail to see what is to be seen. We see so many things with our eyes, but we fail to see what is very, very important in life. So this selection of what is important and what is to be left off in our life is something also that he hints at. So all the material prosperity that Europe has achieved has come to nothingness with the war. It has ended in so much of all the wealth that has amassed were used to create weapons of destruction. And you have the culmination at the end of Second World War, where it is shattered, nothing more is to be done. Then you have the realization. When nothing more is done, then we have. So he it is just, he perceives what is the sickness of the society. So when some things are going wrong, something is bad, we need some people to tell us this is what is happening to the world. So that was what T.S. Eliot was doing at the time when he wrote the poem. He was contributing much to the insights that we were lacking, because we were not understanding what is happening in our relationship. We feel like this. We never voiced our feelings. So this is, and you hear the thunder which is cracking, and Prajapati is giving advice. So he has got demons, he has got gods, he has got humans as his disciples. So Prajapati says, what is our message? They ask him. So from thunder, there comes the voice, da, da, da is repeated. So each one understands in his own way. One takes it as datta, one takes it as dayatvam, one takes it as dhameda. So give, sympathize, and control. That is advice given to gods, to demons, and human beings. So that is, they take it in individualized way. So that is a message of Wasteland also. So if you have eyes to see, if you have ears to perceive, that this is what I have to say, says Eliot. This is what the world lacks in. And it ends with Shanti, that is repeated 3 times. And the civilization which is in ruins at the end, it needs rejuvenation. And the rejuvenation comes with what? With faith. So if you have nothing, if you hold on to nothing, if you are an atheist, if you don't have faith, the atheist may also have something to hold on to. So what you are holding on to, that may be a religion, that may be a kind of concept, whatever it is, that should be the end of life. Only then, otherwise, it will lay fallow just at the beginning. So it is a hope with which he ends the poem, and the civilization which is in ruins still has got faith. So it's a poem on a theme of hope and return to its former splendor. That is the hope of Eliot. That is a hope of all of us also. We want a very peaceful, very rewarding, very meaningful life. So these fragments I have shored against my ruins. Hieronimo is mad again. Datta daitum damyada shanti, shanti, shanti. That is how it. So the rain that will come in the form of spirituality, in the form of so many things. It can imply the east, west looking to east. It can be interpreted in post-colonial light in that way also. But anyhow, it is a restoration. The rain will come. The hyacinth flowers will grow again. And the earth will be green again. People will find a meaning. They will have meaningful relationship. They will have faith. So that is what the thunder has to say. These are some comments by critics on the poem. Lewis has said that it is a vision of desolation and a spiritual drought that was experienced by people. The plight of a whole generation, according to Richards. Brooks, a sight for vanished glory of the past. Then Stephen Spender has said that there is life, there is a life in death, a life of complete inactivity, listlessness, and apathy. So Wasteland is full of diagnosis for the malady of our times. It is a disintegration of modern civilization due to several reasons. And some he has hinted, some we'll have to find out. There is something that we should also do. So Eliot diagnoses that sexual perversion, loss of faith, of moral values, lack of human relationships, commercialization of life, mental tension, politics, and war. These are the maladies that was there during his time when he wrote Wasteland. So Brooks have again commented there is Christian elements that is throughout the poem. We can agree, we can disagree with this. There can be readings, there can be rereadings on the poem. In the light of the critics, you can read the critics and you can reevaluate whether it suits. Is it what the poem is about. So this is one interesting quotes that I could find on the poem, that Barthes has analyzed 2 kinds of text. There is a text of bliss and text of pleasure. So text of pleasure is something which is very comfortable. In you read it, you feel happy, you're contented. Then there is a text of bliss. So it unsettles the reader's historical, cultural, psychological assumptions. It disturbs their taste, it disturbs their values, memories. It brings in many crises in relationship with the language. So that is what the text does to us. We are not, it is not a text of pleasure. You gain something, if you gain out something from it when you contemplate on it, when you put your mind in it, when you reread it, when you open your minds to the diverse things that it presents for us. So it is a text of bliss that it can be for an individual reader. So what is, as we, the title of the lecture was the Wasteland, the rereading of Wasteland in 21st century. So in what are the realities? How can you relate to the poem in this digital age? So digital age also brings in a lot of fragments and the fragments that when society is fragmented, that affects you. But the more you are fragmented, you can't make out what you are. That is the problem that is affecting us immediately. So there may be a time when we are going to mass for the cues. There is we may evolve into homodios. We don't know. There are very many possibilities that is awaiting us. So we never thought that digitalization would come to such a level that it was eating up all our time. Communication has become instantaneous, and we are reading Wasteland. So the problems that was there that he identified, do they persist? Or are it it has changed its form? It has come in new bottles. We don't know. So the more technology, this is my personal comment. You can agree, you can disagree. So the more we get alienated. We are more connected. That is fine. We are digitalized, but at the same time we are fragmented. So we are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, we are on WhatsApp. So all these diverse us, digitalized us. We have digitalized the gods now, digitalized religious services after the pandemic. So that when you read it, you see is it the same thing that is happening in Wasteland in 20th century? So what is your real self? That can be a question, revisiting it in 21st century. And what it can haunt you. For only heaps of broken images. It makes sense when I read it. You are only a heap of broken images that you find. So is it a real you that you find in these fragments? So how would you define your innumerable presence on the digital media? What is your real self? Are you celebrating it or you are regretting it? And you may find an objective correlative, borrowing Eliot's own terms in the poem. That is a rereading that can help you in understanding the poem. What is the objective correlative that you can find when you're reading it in 21st century? This is a kind of collage of how we are, our own self-image that you can find in a digitalized age. So we have diverse different problems now we are facing. It is not the 20th century problems, but some things are similar. Some things are connected. Some things which is we are the same. It is something which I read somewhere that the primitive man, his fears are very similar to a person who is living in London City. They have same fears. So if their fears are same, the other emotions should also be the same. Maybe we have evolved, we have become a bit advanced in intellect. But other than that, we all have the same way of perceiving things. So that is something that we can read into that insight. So it is difficult to make sense of the complexity, but still it can bring in a lot of meaning to our life in all walks of life, in relationships, in workplaces, in religion, in politics, in digital space, and in all the nuances of yourself that would lie in the broken images that you have. So that in that way, you can relate to the poem even in 21st century. This is one of my favorite quotes from Cummings. That is, you can be nobody but yourself. That is very difficult. And night and day, the world is trying to make you somebody else. So to be somebody else is easy, to be yourself is difficult. And to remain as you with all your ideals is the hardest battle that one can fight. And you can never stop fighting that. So that fight for making sense, for making meaning of life begins the time we are born. The moment our consciousness is formed. So that continues even in 21st century. That is something that you can read into the poem, the beautiful poem, the very insightful, the epic, the Wasteland, that can do for a 21st century reader. So that's all for now. And thank you. It's time where we can discuss something about the poem because it has come to feel like home. Alienation is part of life now. So that is, and Eliot has made a comment, genuine poetry can communicate before it is understood. So it's about, definitely about Wasteland. Before you can understand what it is about, read the poem. Sometimes it can communicate to you. So with that, I think I can conclude today's session on Wasteland.
Okay, thank you, Lima, for taking all the trouble.
Thank you, Miss.
I know you are very busy with your NAC work and so many other departmental responsibilities, but in spite of all that, you found time.
Thank you.
Thank
Miss.
you.
Thank you.
There'll be an official vote of thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Lima ma'am. Thank you, Lima ma'am, for your clear and comprehensive presentation. And now we have some more time left for discussion. If any one of you interested in putting questions, please, you can come up with questions. We have only limited time left, but excuse me, ചോദ്യങ്ങളിലേക്ക് ചോദിക്കാവുന്നതാണ്. കുറച്ച് സമയമുള്ളൂ എങ്കിലും ഒന്നോ രണ്ടോ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾക്കുള്ള സമയമുണ്ടെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു. ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കാവുന്നതാണ്.
Two have raised their hands. Two people have raised their hands.
Yes, yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Puvi from Tamil Nadu.
Yeah, Puvi, yeah.
Thank you for the wonderful session, ma'am. Your description and discussion was very, very detailed.
Thank you, Puvi.
Ma'am, the thing is, we have changed a lot as a society, and our ideals and our thinking has changed a lot from the days of T.S. Eliot.
Yeah.
And while reading T.S. Eliot, Wasteland, and there is a lot of talk about sexuality and losing moral values and many other things. So I was just thinking, especially about the idea of promiscuity these days has undergone a lot of change. And in your lecture, you beautifully connected it with the modern life or the life that we are living now. So what would you think Eliot would think about our society now?
That I am not very sure. Anyhow, he would have, as a very sensitive perceiver of what was happening, he would have felt some problems with it. He would have easily diagnosed some issues with the society now also. The fragmented self, I think, is a problem. So at Eliot's time, it was just coming in. It was just grouping into the society. Now it has become the norm. So we are not anxious of it any longer, I think. So that would have been, so I could definitely get into the mind of the poet. Anyhow, he would have perceived what is wrong with us. He would have written another poem on that issue maybe. So he has many problems on diverse issues that he has written, which should be read along with Wasteland. Hollow Men should be read. So many other poems. He has interesting bits on cats' life. He was very much interested. So he diverse things. He would have definitely pointed out it's a celebration of fragmentedness that you can find in postmodernism. We don't find it a problem any longer. But when he was writing, it was something which was coming in and we were looking at. Now we have other problems that is coming in, and we need Eliot back to write about it. So he would have definitely written something about it, I think. So I don't know whether it is a satisfactory answer to your question. Manu, anyone else?
ഒരു ചോദ്യം കൂടി ചോദിക്കാൻ തോന്നുന്നു.
ചോദിക്കാം.
ചോദ്യങ്ങളുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കാം കേട്ടോ. Someone has raised the hand, please.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, Saloni Akshita from Bihar. And
Yeah.
ma'am, today this is the first time I have been reading this particular poem, as
Yeah.
you have explained it very well. So I just wanted to ask, like, I'm having a question regarding Thyracious.
Yeah.
As you said that he has that ability to transform himself into a man and woman because of some sort of curse he has. Yeah. So, like, how just can we bring out a sense of significance by this homosexual character in this present century if we have to evaluate in a very different light, like the problems that homosexuals of society today they are facing?
Yeah. So at that time also maybe they haven't raised that issue in sense, but we only know what is to be female. The males only know what is to be male. So as a character, when he is able to feel male and female, that is somewhere between that homosexual's life. So in that sense, I think he can make out. So they just want to be some who appear like male, they are female at heart. So someone who knows both the feelings, who knows what it is to be male, what is to be female. So in that sense, he can even relate to a homosexual, I feel. That is, so they were there from, but the third gender has come into our space only now. So they were considered as someone who is cursed for long. So it has evolved. The diverse cultural response are there to this group of people. But present day society has slowly started accepting them. There are many people who have not accepted them yet. And in this light, Thyracious is someone who is very unique. So
Ma'am,
yeah.
Ma'am, so can it we can say that he is being glorified as a protagonist in a
No. He is not glorified as a protagonist, but since he can read into the minds, he sees history. There should be someone who can interpret the poem for us. There should be a seer. He is voyeuristic also. So he changes his images from a very and a clairvoyant. He changes his image from a great person to a ordinary wastelander. He comes alive in the poem. So in that sense, he is someone who is brought deliberately by T.S. Eliot, bring in some kind of unity to the poem. It is a poetic technique, perhaps. So that helps in unifying the poem, as he himself said.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I think after there will be time for one more question. So
yeah, I find one is a question by Madhusa in the chat box. Reading the poem as a whole, unified entity, what was your personal experience of the tone of the poem? Desperation. Yes, shall I answer that question? So the question is, what is the personal experience of the poem, Desperation of Hope? So it's a mixed response, actually. So life is always changing. Life brings in diverse experience. It shifts between desperation and hope. So it is a reflection of what you feel. At times you are hopeful when the COVID comes, then you are hopeless. How would you rejuvenate? How the world will come alive? The same feeling is there when you read the poem. But I like the diversity that is given to us. That is part of life, making meaning out of the strands. That is what we all are trying to do, I think. We all want to be happy. We all want to make sense of the world. There are setbacks that come into our life. So the same experience that we have, but it is brought out we think about it. Or sometimes when you're not able to make sense, it gives you insight. That is the personal response of the poem. And I like the poem very much. That is something which I can relate to. I love the poem. So that is it is shifting between desperation and hope. And I at times feel that sometimes the humanity may not have a kind of the alarming rate at which things are going wrong. Sometimes things are getting better. So that same feeling is there, as we all have, I think. That is the personal response to the poem.
Lima, may I ask a question?
Yes, yes, definitely.
See, I actually I had to leave in between because two calls came. So I just wanted to ask you whether there is a famous statement which all of us must have are familiar with, that Eliot has made. Uh, I am I'm a royalist in politics, and a classicist in literature, royalist in politics, and an Anglo-Catholic in religion, and a Catholic in religion. Do you think that this conversion to Catholicism did it deepen his anxiety about the barrenness, the spiritual wasteland that the modern world has become?
Maybe
Does it
that,
have?
yes, miss. Definitely, it must have produced some anxieties in him, must have deepened his sense when you come in touch with a kind of new sense of spirituality that is there in Anglican Church. That must have definitely had its impact on him. And he read widely on different religions, and it also caused some personal trauma for him because his parents were not very happy at his conversion. His taking of British citizenship also is something which disturbed them. So it is a kind of mixed response, I think, but definitely it has contributed something to the poem.
And as you said, the Hollow Men is actually considered to be a prologue to
Prelude, prologue to
prelude
the poem.
to
Yes,
poem.
yes. That is
And
being read by some critics like that.
and Life in Death syndrome, that is also
Yes,
death in life syndrome, that spiritual. Yes.
Thyracious.
Anyway, it was a very clear and very thought-provoking presentation.
Thank you,
Thank you.
miss. Thank you very much, miss. I greatly value your words, Miss Anjana, miss. You've been teaching for so many years. Definitely, it is very thought-provoking.
Any questions? Otherwise, I think Lima must also be in a hurry. She has got lots of feedback link. I think they are asking for feedback link. Are you
There
providing,
is no
Manu?
feedback. No,
Feedback?
ma'am. We are providing feedback link. So I think we can wind up the session now.
Yes.
Actually, I know that there are still questions there, but as the time we have only limited time, we will be winding up the session. So thank you once again, Limited, for giving us a very wonderful, comprehensive, and concise presentation of Wasteland. Now I invite Aparna to give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Manu.
webinar was an opportunity to revisit the masterpiece of T.S. Eliot. On behalf of Research and Postgraduate Department, I express my sincere gratitude to Antony, Assistant Professor at Xavier's College for Women and Aluva, for this conversation. Thank you. And I express my gratitude to Preeti Nair and Head of English Partner for their support. And I thank Sri